The following program was funded in part by the Utah Humanities Council, the Southern Utah University Center for Faculty Excellence, and the Southern Utah University Department of Communication.
We were loading a boar. Big, mean. He jumped out of the pickup 4 times and tore out my stock racks and rooted me in the stomach, and I fell down, and he bit John on the knee, and he thought it was broken, and so did I. And the boar stood over in the far corner of the pen and watched us. And John and I just sat there, tired, and Jan laughed and brought us a beer. And I said, "John, it ain't worth it. Nothing's going right. And I'm feeling half dead, and haven't wrote a poem in ages. I'm ready to quit it all." And John said, "Oh, young feller, you ain't got started yet. And the reason's because you're trying to do it outside yourself. You ain't looking in. You want to write poems. You got to write poems about what you know. And the rest, you can write about pigs and that boar and you and Jan and me and the rest, and there ain't no way you're gonna quit." We drank beer and smoked, all 3 of us. Finally loaded him, drove home, unloaded him. He bit me again, and I went in the house and got out my paper and pencils and started writing. And I found out, John, he was right.
In southern Utah, you'll find cattle ranchers, wool growers, some pig farmers, and a would-be pig farmer. Poet David Lee likes pigs, and many of his poems include pigs. That's why he's called the Pig Poet.
How beautifully brown and deep the red gilt's eyes by lightning.
He grew up in rural Texas and got his first pig for a school project when he was 14.
I could either raise chickens in my house or the backyard, or I could go out to the school farm and could have a pen and put a pig in it. I didn't want chickens, so I got my first pig, and I got addicted.
Eventually, he had up to 200 pigs on his farm in the small town of Paraguna. Now he lives in the suburbs of St. George, Utah.
And at the moment, I don't own a live pig. My daughter tells me there are 138 pigs in my house, and I don't know how many I've got on the wall behind me here. So they're more iconic signification, I suppose, now than reality. But I'll have a pig again soon, I'm sure.
What's the point of being a poet if you'd rather be a pig farmer? You have everything if you're a poet. If you want to make a pig farm, you just get your paper out and you make a pig farm. If you want to talk like a pig farmer, you just do it. So Dave has everything.
For every soul who has at least one poem, Lee's got 2 about pigs.
Matters. I mean, that lady right there, she's worth a poem.
While teaching writing and literature at Southern Utah University, he's authored 7 books. A few of his earlier works established the pig reputation.
Not only do I like them, a pig, if you give half a chance, will like a human. And I've had good friendships with pigs. I had to sell my black sow Blackula today. She has become fallow, rejects the boar, has no pigs, and eats too much to keep. Alas, damn it, I love that pig.
So not so much a world of pigs. These pigs are only there to act as excuses for meditations about mankind and about misbehavior and about happiness.
Evening. The red sow rises from her mud to wade in elm shadow.
We learn a lot about pigs along the way, but what we really learn is we learn a lot about ourselves.
But he really works out in his poetry philosophical questions, religious questions, the questions of the way people interact.
Lee's poetry is mostly a story of yesterday, about the people, places, and a lifestyle fading quickly into the western sunset. He writes about what were the good times.
Mrs. Patrick, she brung 12-quart jars of homemade peaches she was proud of. She won the blue ribbon almost every year at the fair and says, "I hope you enjoy them, but could I please have the jars back when you're done?"
And he writes about the bad times.
He should have been something else besides a farmer, I think. He hitched a ride on a manure spreader when he's a kid, about 14. One of them teeth got him where he's down hiding. That spindle come up on his face, torn him open. He lost an eye out of it, never could see out of it again.
And while he discusses a wide variety of topics, sometimes to Lee, a poem's hardly a poem without a pig.
I wish I could get these hogs to grow. Sometimes I wonder if it's something wrong with this pen. That's the slowest growing bunch of pigs I ever had. Just can't get them to grow.
From his childhood and his pig farming days, Lee draws material for his poems. But he says he never intended to write pig poems.
I've intended to be the new John Milton, to write poems about life and death, heaven and hell, matters of consequence.
He was taught to imitate poetry when he was in college, and so he was imitating poetry. Well, didn't work.
And I was having so much trouble with that. I never knew when I was not crossing the line from my work into theirs, that I just decided this is too hard.
Because of that, he decided, you know, maybe this poetry stuff wasn't for him.
And there was a day when I actually went so far, no exaggeration, no hyperbole, I took every pencil out of the coffee cup, I broke each in half, threw it in the garbage can, threw my writing paper away and said, that's it. I'm going to start wearing double knit polyester leisure suits. I'm going to write academic papers. I'm going to be an administrator and a thorough college-level teacher professional.
Then one night, Dave and his wife Jan helped their neighbor John with a sow that was having trouble giving birth.
And I had the little hands, and so I got to pull the pigs out, literally, piece by piece. And just from that experience, something clicked in his brain. I don't know what. He just got up in the middle of the night one night and wrote For Jan with Love. And he just developed that narrative voice, and we call them the John poems at first, or the pig poems.
John, I said, this guy told me if you broke your leg and fell down in a pig pen and couldn't get out, pigs would eat you. Do you believe that? When I was young, Eugene Cummins fell down in his pig pen, had a heart attack. He's dead. So when they found him, it was afternoon. He'd gone out to feed his pigs that morning. R.B. McCravey said he'd have loved to known what Eugene Cummins was thinking about that brung it on. Maybe he was daydreaming, seen a naked vision and couldn't handle it. I don't know. I wasn't there. It was August. So it would have been hot for sure. That'd have smelt him, but his hogs never ate a bite of him. They just sat in the mud and watched, because Rufus said so at the graveyard. And that's a fact. The first poems that I wrote in this voice scared the hell out of me. I didn't know if they were poems. I didn't know what they were.
It's not something that's easily accepted at first by the ivory tower, but it's legitimate, and it's very important to many kinds of people. And
what he does, I think, is take rural myth, or even better yet, he creates myth from rural life.
And I think my poems really attempt to be a mythopoeia, a making of myth out of the fabric of my own life. It's cold. That wind don't help a thing. I think I may be losing another finger and 2 toes, and that's not even the coldest part. I heard spit freezes 50 below, so hold it in. I want no holes in the side of the barn. Once that cold pea stacks up, my daddy once told me he was in Montana with a woman, had to chop her loose in the ground. Hurry up, get that other sack out of the truck. Let's go in and warm up before the rest of us freezes and falls off.
People come to it expecting something much more highfalutin, and they get that, and then there's all of this other biblical, epic, lyric artistry going on, and they just don't know what to do with it.
He's unique. I use him when I teach, for instance, to introduce students to voice, because I think Dave has that unique voice.
Lee's poetry has brought national recognition through fellowships from the National Endowment for the Humanities and the Arts. He's widely published and performs many readings.
He is a poet on the status of our best-known poets in this country. He is friends with our best-known poets in this country. His name is known, you know, in communities, in literary communities, throughout the country, vast publications, awards for his poetry.
to have had this achievement by the age that he is, and to have the following that he does by the age that he is extremely rare.
Jerry Johnston writes book reviews for the Deseret News. He documented Lee's rise in popularity and his unique way of capturing ideas on paper.
And he'll sit down for hours at a time, and his wife will bring him clean shirts and bring him juice, and he will just write in this barrage of writing.
And he just stays in there till he's ready to come out, literally. And he doesn't eat. He absolutely cannot be disturbed.
It's almost like a mystical thing. He's pouring it out almost if it's coming from someplace else through him.
When I sit down to write one of these poems, the poems that have been called the John voice poems, there's never a struggle. Never. I just sit down and listen, and it's almost as if the poems are given to me.
Perhaps it's inspiration, revelation, or his own brilliance. It's also interesting to note that religious themes abound in Lee's work, possibly because he studied theology for 3 years in college.
And I think that it's a kind of biblical world he sees out there, in which old men are wise and good, you know, and that we all see in our lives how interrelated we are.
And if you hear Dave talk or read, it's basically the language of a camp preacher, of a Bible thumper.
This unique performance style captivates audiences. Not many people can take a classified ad and turn it into a poem.
You can contact me regarding any of the above between 9:30 a.m. and noon, Wednesday through Saturday at 688 South 800 East Street, the same street as South 8 East.
This is poetry carried by the voice for the ear. It's not intended really to be poetry carried by the printed text for the eye.
Confucius on his bathtub had carved in gold, make it new. Make it new. Every day, make it new. And that's the attitude I want to present when I read these poems. This just happened. This is real. This is me.
I've seen him before a lot of readings, and he gets really nervous and he can't eat.
Before they noticed it, them 2 geese turned into over 100. You couldn't even come up to their gate even. Here all them gooses had run up with their wings and tongues out, hissing and squawking like an oil well fire. Even the Jehovah Witnesses couldn't get up to their porch. They'd have busted your knees flopping their arm, and then you'd slip and goose crap and fall down. They'd bite off all your private parts and ears before you could crawl off and get away, and that is what saved their farm.
He is as much, I believe, a performer of his poetry as he is a writer of his poetry.
On the way to the auction in Salina to sell our pigs, John told a story about a grave blaster he knew in Ph.D. Not a digger. The ground was too hard, so he had to blast his graves out with dynamite. John couldn't remember the man's name, but he had a son named Manuel, who the story was about anyway. There was a day when the father was ill and had to be taken to the hospital in Ely. Afternoon, the mortician called and asked for the father. Only Manuel was left to blast the grave. He loaded his father's truck with sticks from the case, fused the charge, walked behind a small knoll, and detonated the explosives. The blast carved a huge gap in the earth which spread much farther than Manuel had anticipated. Nearby graves were upthrust and several coffins disinterred and scattered profusely about the area. John's story struck me as being somewhat sardonically humorous, and I laughed. Incredulous, John slowed his truck, cut me off with a glance. "It ain't funny," he said. That was his daddy's grave he was blasting.
I've watched audiences in Dave's reading go from gut-splitting laughter to daubing their eyes with their handkerchiefs.
Lee also reveals his deep knowledge and understanding of classic literature, as some of his poems blend classic literature with earthy images.
So Aeneas walked up the Tiber until he found a sow. She had a litter of 30 pigs, and he knew it was a sign. That would be the place. Where'd he go to get a boar? No, John, it was a myth. But where'd he get his boar? He didn't, John. He killed a sow on the side and sacrificed her to the gods for marking the place. How come you telling me stories like that? I'm busy. I haven't got no time to listen to that crap. You go get in your car and go on home, find you another book to read. You tell him, next time, call me. I'll make it right with God and him both. You tell him, a sow has 30 pigs. I'll trade him my pickup straight across, sight unseen. But I don't want to hear it now. I got work to... Who wrote that book? He must have lived in New York City his whole life in a whorehouse somewhere. Just go on. I ain't listening to no more writing like that. I don't need it. You tell him, if he doesn't know nothing about pigs, then don't write about pigs. He should find something else. That's all.
I mean, he's exceptionally well trained in the classics and Milton and, you know, so on. All the people that you need to be trained in to be a college professor. And he draws on that in his work, but he also draws on the guy down the street, just the neighborhood.
People try to dismiss him as just a pig farmer or a populist or something, and then all of a sudden you start finding these other levels to him.
He may be the only poet writing that I know of who brings what appears to be a very earthy style rooted in the language and in the life of the common working person, and combines it with high literary allusion.
I could have never written anything without the influence of what I have learned from my hero, from John Milton, and I hope I've been honest and true to what I have learned from those people.
Yet, with a deep background in the classics, Lee's able to bring poetry to the common man.
Williamson. This is David Lee. I live in Paraguna. During my morning run, I passed by your stock pens west of Paraguna, and I saw that one of your cows, the black whiteface, I think, seems to have calved during the night. I think around sunrise, the calf was still steaming. At least I think so. But the cow seems to be in some trouble. I think her uterus has prolapsed, and she probably needs some help. I was running, and I didn't stop and walk over to see. Instead, I turned around and came back to call and let you know so you can go out and see if she needs help. Who's this? Is this church business? No, Wallace. I'm the guy who runs out by your stock pens every morning. You wave at me. Today I ran early and saw that you've got a cow in trouble. She's an Angus Hereford cross. She's calved and her vagina has protruded. You ought to go out and check on her as soon as you can. Is this about selling Amway? Listen. Damn it. This morning in your west pen, the black Ballie dropped her calf and her butt is out down to her knees. She needs help. Oh, damn, it's that 2-year-old heifer. I didn't know she was that close. I gotta go. Look, mister, whoever you are, you call back. Take and give my wife your name. I owe you, but I can't talk now. I gotta go, but I sure thank you. I'll make it up to you someday, somehow. Bye.
A lot of the pig poems are written for people who think that poems are completely incomprehensible, impenetrable. I'm writing for them to show them that's not true.
And I took my son to hear Dave when my son was about 12 years old, and I dragged him because it was poetry. And I had a converted child by the time the reading was over with.
Lee speaks of love of nature. Through words, he reveres Western landscape.
Sometimes, says John, I can't stand it. I'm on that hay swacker. It's green alfalfa all in front. And then them red Utah hills behind climb up to the mountain, just like they're pasted on blue. I want to dwell on landscape because setting, by confining, defines the character within the place. And I want to pay homage to that. I want these to be poems to Gaia, poems to the earth, poems to where my feet are standing. I went to the edge of the wood in the color of evening. John Haynes. The color of evening washed at my feet, and I dreamed years of dying suns buried in the west end of Kolob Lake. Old fishermen on their gray rocks, beaver and swallows mating in the eclipse of twilight and dusk, sink in the splashing reflection to the meadows beneath the mirror, where fat trout graze like hogs on September alfalfa. A subterranean world of sunken campfires, where I sit before black ashes and drink lake water from a rusted cup, while the sun falls and drives the fish upward to explode into night. Silver gods leaping to swallow the moon.
Despite the fact we're dealing with pig farmers, he is in fact a protector of the natural world. People must protect the environment in which they live as naturally as do the animals in the hills around them.
Cold. Last night, a skiff of snow. So I got up, 5 o'clock, made a fire, watched the sky unbuild. I mean, I'm drinking coffee by myself, shivering, and I'm cold. So it's time, you wonderful son of a bitch. Get on up. I'm ready. Now. In the snow, yesterday's tracks deepen. A flock of starlings cross my window and break the monotony of the sky. A last leaf falls, crosses the yard in front of me, scuttles over the crust toward the sow's pen, makes small tattered prints. Nothing better to do? I pull on my heavy jacket and cap and go to chase it down, a gift for Jan. The red sow pauses and lifts her head from the trough as I pass. Oblivious of where I am, I wade the snow to the fence. Wind fills my eyes with frozen leaves, an etched forest, and my blurred vision of night. A gust bounces against my body. Steps away, I see the leaf on a smooth patch of snow. I pick it up, then toss it into the north currents. It drifts beyond my fence like a small animal, fleeing, whirls twisting away behind like breath. I look away to the west, find night already there.
Even with all of his success, some say Lee might not be able to write anything but pig poems.
And Dave has, if it's a weakness, has gotten typecast as the pig farmer of Utah, post-Texas or whatever.
When Dave reads, we want to hear these pig poems. I'm not sure we give him a chance to read anything else.
I hope I could. I like to think I'm not completely monomaniacal and fixed as being a Johnny one note, Johnny one subject. On the other hand, I'm still very much in love with the language and the subject matter that I'm dealing with, and I'm very much enamored of the audience that has allowed me to become part of their lives.
Whether pigs make an appearance in the next book, I'll never be able to predict, but I think those people that he knows, that cast of characters that he is spinning in his head all the time, will be there.
And his audience can look forward to more stories from the pig poet.
It is my roots, it's my legacy, it's my heritage, and I have nothing but pride in being called the pig poet. So where am I going? I'm going the same place I've been, walking down the dusty road, kicking road apples and trying to make some songs as I go.